Hi, welcome to Simple Shifts, conversations to fuel the body, mind, and soul. I'm Martha McKinnon from the blog Simple Nourished Living. And with me is my brother and my partner at Simple Nourished Living, Peter Morrison.
Hi.
Hi. So today we're going to explore La Dolce Vita and what Weight Watchers can learn from the Italian lifestyle in La Dolce Vita. And so
Does
I'm really
that mean the
excited to talk
sweet
about
life?
the sweet life. Yeah. So we went to Italy last year, and I thought this could be a fun conversation. But before we dive in, what are you happy about? What's exciting in your world?
I can move about freely without pain.
Oh, tell me
How's that
more.
for a teaser?
Mm, yikes. What did you do? What happened?
Friday, had a great day, played pickleball, took our walk. It's in the evening, getting ready for dinner. I'm in the shower. I feel like somebody punched me in the gut. I'm like, what is going on? So got out of the shower, threw on some clothes, was able to like crawl to the bed and like lay down, but I'm just like in agony. Could not stand, could not sit, could barely do anything. So after about 10 minutes, I made my way out to the living room and tried to get comfortable and said, I can't eat tonight. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Laid there on the floor for a little bit, wasn't getting any better. Thought, well, I did play pickleball. I'm like, well, maybe I'm dehydrated or, something. So I was able to eat a banana. Didn't really help. Drank some water, got back to bed. I'm like, it made it about 2 hours, but it just was not getting better, was getting not necessarily worse, but was just like the worst pain of my life. So ultimately decided we need to like go see somebody. So ended up at the ER. And about an hour waiting there, ultimately turns out I had kidney stones. Yes. So
Goodness,
they
that
gave
is
me an IV. They gave me an IV because they did say I was a little dehydrated. They gave me. I asked for some light pain medication. I didn't want anything too crazy heavy. So did the test, did a scan, did some blood work. So then they sent me back out, which was okay because the pain was relieved at that point. So sent me back out to the waiting room in the ER, waiting for the lab results and whatnot. And then the pain meds started wearing off again. And I'm just like, I'm doubled over again in the chair. And I'm like, this is not good. Like, I can't handle it. And I mean, I consider myself to have a pretty high pain threshold or tolerance, but this was the worst pain I've ever felt. So there was an RN at the desk and she's like, well, let me look up what they gave you. And it took a while, but then they were ready to release me too. Because there was nothing they could do at that point. The size was small enough. They said it will pass on its own. They did give me pill, which was stronger, pain medication, sent us home with instructions, got home. Luckily by this time it's like 1:30 in the morning. Was able to get to sleep, had a good night's sleep, got up and had a pee, of course, and looked in the toilet and sure enough, there's like one or two like little grains of sand. So thank goodness I did some research and some people have this for weeks before they pass. And then then whole next day, I was very cautious because I didn't know if it was gonna come back or was that it? Is there more coming? But apparently, it's been a couple days now, but knock on wood, everything seems to be good. But I didn't know if my appendix burst. I didn't know if some organ was ruptured. I mean, and the people jokingly in the hospital we're calling it like the closest thing a man would ever feel to childbirth.
I've heard that many times. Yes, I've heard that before. It
And
makes you
unfortunately,
realize,
I guess once you've had one, you're sort of it, there's a good chance you may have more, but it's like yikes.
yeah,
So the next day I'm cooking dinner, I'm dancing around the music. I'm like, it felt so good to not be in pain.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
something we take for granted until we experience severe pain, for sure. Well,
for
I'm glad
sure.
you're better. I'm glad you're on the other side of it. That is something to celebrate. And the fact that
Yeah.
most of the time we are pain-free is something to celebrate.
And I'm like, the size of these things, they were tiny. I mean, teeny, teeny, tiny. I'm like, how could that cause so much? And I think from the little research I did, I think from the time it left my kidney, there's a little tube it has to go through to get to your bladder. I think that for me, that's where all the pain was. I think given the size and everything, once it was in the bladder and got flushed out, I wasn't aware of any feeling or any sensation, but yeah.
Yeah. So when they talk about passing kidney stones, they're not kidding, right? Yeah.
No. And it came on so suddenly. I don't know if it was the warm water from the shower or whatnot, but it just came on, and
But
I just had
like
no
you're saying, it
idea.
must have gotten into that ureter. It must have got into that tube from your kidney down to your bladder
Mhm.
and started to cause owies.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
so
glad you're through that.
me too.
I had no idea that you'd been through all that. I'm
Surprise. Yeah.
surprised. Well, how do we
The
segue
joys of
now from
aging.
I don't know. I think younger people get kidney stones too. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't
some research I did is most common in men in, like, 30 to 40 years old, believe it or not, so which I'm far past that, but
so you made it.
anywho,
Well,
that's
that's
my
something
good
to
news.
celebrate. That's good news. That's something to celebrate. I have nothing nearly as exciting, but it does kind of segue us into our topic of La Dolce Vita today. I'm
Mhm.
giving myself, I love to read, but for some reason, I haven't for some time allowed myself to read fiction. I've just been so much reading nonfiction, and I get focused on a topic, and then I go down a rabbit hole, and I'm doing sort of more, I guess, serious nonfiction reading. And so this summer, I went to the library here, and I just decided to play. And so I'm in my second book, and this book is called Stars in an Italian Sky by Jill Santopolo. And it's set between Genoa, Italy, and New York. And it goes back and forth between just after the war and present time. And it was a fun, delightful read. But again, it was a lot of time in Italy. It took me back to Italy. It took me back to the vacation that we
Mm.
took. And because one of our stops was Genoa, and I thought this is a perfect time to explore everything we talked about when we were in Italy and some of those feelings of Italy, and how I feel as though we can take some of those experiences and the lifestyle and their approach to food and life and relationship and point out how it's beneficial to, because I feel like I go on vacation, I feel like I give myself more latitude, I lighten up on my rules, I live a more relaxed lifestyle, and I often come back without having gained weight, even though I feel like I'm being much more indulgent. And it's like, well, what's that like, and why does the Italian lifestyle kind of support that? So, are you open for a conversation around that?
Yeah, it sounds good. I hope to be able to remember some things.
So, what comes to my mind immediately when I think about and I reminisce about that trip to Italy, and we flew into Milan, we went to Genoa, we went to Perugia, we went to Florence, we went to Cinque Terre,
Mhm.
uh, and then on from there, and then Rod and I continued the trip, and we were in Parma, and we were in Venice, and we were in Trieste, and it was just a wonderful. So we got lots of Italian experience. But one of the things that comes to my mind immediately is just like there's a different, I think, relationship. The Italians have a different relationship with food, I think, than we do in America. It's like I think sometimes in America we get sort of vigilant and we sort of think of food as good and bad and all these rules and you know, paleo this and vegetarian this. And I just feel like it's a much more like sort of happy relationship with food, that they just think of food in terms of not whether it's good or bad, but they have, how fresh is it and where did it come
Mhm.
from and how does it taste, and how can we turn this into something delightful? So that's one big difference, I think, and I think having that positive relationship, and looking for, how can I have the freshest food, and is just one thing that I noticed. We went to a beautiful food tour, a food and wine tour in Florence, and I mean, being in that market with all of that beautiful food, with people just so proud of the quality, of everything, of the fruits, of the vegetables, of the fish. It's just walking through the smells, the tastes. It's just I don't know, it just gets you excited, and
Mhm.
I think when when you're just really you're engaging all your senses like that, you're not just, coming home and, like, opening a box and sticking it in the microwave. It's just so much more, um, sensual. You're just the smelling, the tasting, the touching, the feeling, um it's just so much more vibrant. So that was one,
Right,
thing
right.
that I noticed. And then I think about there are rules. The Italians have, and I think a lot of European countries, there are rules around food. There are times of day when you eat, and there are times of day when you don't, and there are foods that you eat at certain times and you don't. And I think that we're more like all you can eat 24/7. There's never a time when a restaurant's not down. Where if you're in Italy, it's like, well, we're open for lunch from this hour to this hour, and we're open from dinner from this hour to this hour. And I made a huge faux pas, if you remember when we were in I kinda knew I was doing it, but I we were in a really nice restaurant in Rio Maggiore, in, and I ordered cappuccino, like, after dinner, and the waiter
This
just
was
had to, like.
probably what, 9 p.m. at night maybe?
Yeah, and I mean, I kinda knew I was doing it, but I had no idea the reaction, and the waiter just had to make fun of me, because there, you don't drink a cappuccino. You would never drink anything with milk after, like, 11 o'clock. There's time, there's rules, and so he had to point out. He said good morning to me when he brought it, or, he kinda teased me about doing that, because at that hour, you would only have espresso, 'cause
Mhm.
and there are lots of rules. You don't put cheese on your fish, and they just have a lot of, I think rules that probably, help in guiding them eat in a sorta healthy, balanced way.
Yeah, it makes me think too that we also ran into that issue with, the spritzers we were drinking.
Right, yes.
And we were sitting at this cute little outside sidewalk cafe. It was a warm day, and we were looking over the menu, and I think we all ordered they had several different spritzers on the menu, and, um, one of us ordered one with, I forget, with Campari maybe?
So I think, yeah, Aperol Spritz is everywhere now. It's a really popular
Yeah.
drink. Also, like, I think Limoncello Spritz is an option, and I
Mhm.
think Campari Spritz is an option. And one in our party asked for the Aperol and the Campari to be combined, a little bit of each, and the waiter was, like, taken aback like a cast, like, "No, that won't taste good. We can't possibly." And, but then, we said, "But we have had it that way, and we do like it, a little bit of each." "Okay, if you want." And so, yeah, uh, so a lot more, and I think, like I said, because we are, um as human beings, we are designed for the seafood diet. We are designed to eat when we see food. This whole concept of, feast or famine, I think cultures have had to decide and set up these rules to help guide you through, uh, your life in a healthy, balanced way, so that you're not eating 24, 7, and that you do
Mhm.
put limits in a sort of healthy, fun way that kind of work for, people across the board. So there are definitely more rules around food in terms of your timing of when you're going to eat and what you're going to eat. Breakfast over there, traditionally is just much lighter than we have here. It's usually just maybe a little toast, um, a little croissant, which they call cornetto. I mean, a lot of people take their breakfast in these little cafes and bars where you just You just have your espresso standing with a little, biscotti or little donut. So it's not you're not gonna see typically the huge breakfast like we often the eggs and um, the heavy breakfast that we tend to indulge in here. So that's another difference. And again, there's gonna be hours for your lunch. Dinner's gonna tend to be later than we're used to here. Oftentimes, the restaurants don't even open till after, we have, as Americans are getting ready to go to bed. So that's another interesting difference. I also noticed, like, that they tend to eat more, like, in courses. It's not like everything at once. There tends especially during the lunch meal or the dinner meal, you're gonna tend to have, your little appetizer and then your little pasta and then move into a main course with some type of protein and vegetable and dessert. So the meal is spread out over a lot more time. Portions are much smaller, much than we
Mhm.
experience here. It's causing me to flip back years ago. Before this trip, I went to Italy to take part in a yoga retreat, and we stayed at this lovely little villa would be too grand a word, but it was just a beautiful sort of bed and breakfast with a separate. This was in Umbria in the hills with a lovely room with big windows for the yoga portion of it, and every night we took the meals together in another separate room, and food was served family style, and I didn't know there were going to be so many courses, and so the first night when the big bowl of pasta comes, I thought that was it, you know? And so I ate way too much. I ate way more pasta because then there was coming the vegetables and the fish and on and on. So the spreading it out, you get lots of variety, you get a much more balanced meal, and because you're eating more slowly and spreading it out, you tend to eat, you slow down and eat less, and it's much more social, with
Mhm.
um eating with, it's not like just eating alone in front of the television. That would just be not very Italian at all. You're gonna be eating, with family around the table, lots of conversation, wine, and just a much more relaxed, sorta happy, uh, experience, which goes back again to the La Dolce Vita concept.
I hope to find I need to go back through the pictures because I wanna add some pictures in that apply to some of what we're talking about, but on the food tour, we did a walking food tour in Venice where the market you mentioned earlier, I think that might have been the first stop,
Yeah, in Florence, yeah.
in Florence, right?
Yep.
And we also stopped at he took us to a little cookie shop. It wasn't a cookie shop, I mean, but it was a and it
Like the
was I
biscotti,
was
the
so
cantucci's.
Cantucci, right. I was so impressed and really, really enjoyed those. They were small, they were not really overly sweet, but just so they were just perfect.
Yeah, that's the other thing, even sweets tend to be less sweet,
Mhm.
in Italy, the cookies, the biscotti, they're, many of the desserts, panna cotta, fruits, eat the cakes, they're not cloying the way that so many, you're not gonna have layers of icing, and they're just gonna be the food tends to be simpler, um, definitely, but again, so much attention to quality and to flavor, and I think what you when you really start to play with this, and I've done this in the past as I've, through the years, played with different ways to, handle my weight management. Becoming a little bit of a food snob, intentionally just to be more, discriminating and, uh, in terms of what you're eating can be another way to limit, how much you're eating, and what I've tended to notice is that if you indulge in something that's really, really delicious, you need less of it, or it just stays with you um it just keeps you satisfied. I mean, and I don't know if it's just because I think we are this sort of the mind body connection. And I think tasting really delicious food and savoring it has a different effect on your whole body than just kind of chowing down on something that's really not very good. And so
Mhm.
really savoring delicious food is another way to incorporate this whole concept of la dolce vita into our uh, weight management.
Well, that makes me think of um, sort of near where we stayed in Florence. We had this really nice lunch at this little outside. Again, everything seemed to be outside on a sidewalk cafe, but I don't even remember exactly what we had, but it was like tomatoes and cheese and bread, and it was several. I think we did small plates and just shared items, but everything was so good. But a few shops down, there was like this huge line, and come to find out, it was like this Instagram famous sandwich shop where everybody was took this huge giant sandwiches, and they would take their pictures and Instagram, and it was like this tourist trend because we asked our food guide about that, and he said, "Oh, don't something the locals would never do. It's just something the tour buses pull up to, and people want to see." So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so very interesting. It's like, no, no, no. Real Italians would never fall for this ginormous, you know, sandwich. But it's working
Yeah,
well for the tourists, so that's
yeah.
very interesting. And it was fun to take that food tour and get off the beaten path, to be
Mm-hmm.
taken to the real local, traditional, establishment. Some of them who've been in the family for like that little cookie Cantucci shop for generations. Yeah.
What was your favorite meal? Do you have a
Oh my
favorite meal?
gosh. There were so many delicious meals, so much delicious food. The one that really stands out in my memory, I think it was it in Perugia? We went sort
Mm-hmm.
of upstairs, and it was just a very
Mm-hmm.
small restaurant with a very limited menu, but everything was just
Mm-hmm.
so lovingly prepared with such, attention to detail. Um, that was the one that stands out in my memory, and a very
Same for
simple.
me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really crazy expensive either. It was
No.
super high quality, and it was very reasonable priced. And I think another one that stands out for different reasons was our first night in Genoa.
Mhm.
Little sidewalk alley, because it was like the old part of the city where no cars were allowed, and it was the husband was the waiter server, and his wife was in the kitchen, and she did all the food, all the cooking, and some of her old family recipes, and it was just it was just so much fun.
It was so much fun and so delicious. And again, that's what you find is there's just so many little small family
Mhm.
establishments, many fewer like big chains, corporate type of places. You just don't see that as much. It's just a much many more independent, small family businesses. And of course, gelato always becomes a big deal too. I love
Mhm.
the gelato, and I love the fact that there's so many, again, delicious flavors, and you're served such a small portion that you do slow down with a tiny little spoon, that you do slow down and really take your time to taste and to savor. It makes you realize you don't need, an ice cream cone that's as big as your head. So I
So
think
do you
there're
have
just
any
so many takeaways.
tips for travelers, or maybe tips for recreating, um,
Well, the
that at
things that come to
home
mind,
maybe?
yeah, well, yeah, well, and I think one tip is, I mean, I think it's a much more active
Hmm.
life there. I mean, what we experience is there's just a lot more walking, a lot more just general exercise and people out, just walking, moving, gardening, just getting more steps in ways that don't need to feel intense. But I think just moving more, and I think we can always incorporate that into our life by just finding ways. One simple way that I play with is just to park further away when I am going somewhere. If I'm not, living the pedestrian lifestyle, at least I can park in a far end of the parking lot and just incorporate more steps into my day. So I just think just look for easy ways to move. I think about the whole concept of being more particular and discriminating and just really paying attention to how your food tastes and letting your taste buds really guide you in terms of freshness and taste and just notice how much more satisfied you are and how much less you really need to feel satisfied when you're eating food that is really flavorful and tasty. I mean, in my mind, this just causes me to go to Phoenix, where we're not in Italy, but we're in Pizzeria Bianco or one of Bianco's
Mm.
restaurants. Where a very limited menu, but everything's done with such high quality. A sandwich there, um, a tuna sandwich or a simple sandwich, I've found I can eat that, maybe half of it, and it'll keep me satisfied for hours. I don't know if it's just this, like I said, it's sort of, is it because of the quality of the ingredients, or is it because it tasted so good that somehow, your body processes it differently? But I've noticed that when you just slow down and really savor delicious, high quality food, that just notice the difference for yourself, in how it makes you satisfied. And then just think about little rules that you can come up with for yourself that will help guide you, not from a place of having to punish yourself, but just that you're lovingly caring for yourself. And the fact that, no, 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 it's like after this hour, I don't do that anymore. I don't put milk in my coffee after a certain hour, or I don't eat eggs until lunchtime. I wait and have an omelet at lunch, or a frittata, just to sort of play with different ways to come up with your own rules that are going to help guide you and take away some of the, you know. I've played a lot with the no snacking thing because we've become a society that thinks we have to be eating so often, and the truth is, if we know we're going to be eating 3 meals a day, or we know that our dinner is like an hour away, we're not going to starve, in an hour. So I think just playing with, for me, it's been helpful to say, no, 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 I had enough lunch and I'm getting a little hungry, but if I'm going to really enjoy my dinner, I need to not be eating every time I happen to see something, or every time I happen to have
Mm.
just this little, I don't know, sensation in my stomach. It's okay. Hunger, I think playing with hunger and letting yourself be a little hungry so you can enjoy your meal is something to play with. And again, you don't want to take it to the extreme. You don't want to get so overly hungry that you're going to eat too quickly, but just to play a little bit. And again, I think those rules that many European countries have about this is lunchtime, this is dinner time, can help with that. To say, I'm not going to be eating in between. And again, it's gonna the fewer times you eat, the fewer opportunities you have to overeat, the less overall you're going to eat, and it's just another easy way to manage your weight that just kind of feels natural. So that would be another tip.
Or maybe flip that, and if you do have a day where maybe you're hungry and you find yourself snacking a lot, do a girl dinner for, in the evening, and don't feel like you have to have this big dinner or big meal. Maybe just keep it light.
Exactly. I did that last night where we did, Rod had been out. I was playing again, trying to, working on recipes for the website, making sort of heartier snacks than I typically would. And so we did indulge in a very hearty snack, and it was delicious, but very simple, that I'll share on the website soon. And it was little skewers of uh, chicken sausage, chunks of apple, and a chunk of cheese.
Mm.
And that's something I wouldn't typically eat. But by then, when dinner came, like you said, I mean, I ended up eating much less dinner because I had had this very generous, very hearty snack at a time when I typically wouldn't. And so again, you're just always adjusting and paying attention, just because you typically eat a big dinner, even if you had a big dinner planned. If you're not hungry, if you have eaten more during the day, if you did snack more than you intended, there's always an opportunity to adjust. Every meal is a new opportunity to just kind of tune in and to pay attention and to learn more about yourself. So, yeah, good advice.
Cool.
So that was fun. That was like a little trip down memory lane because while I had remembered my coffee cappuccino experience, I had forgotten about the the spritz, the Aperol, Campari experience, so that was fun. So,
Great. Well, if you have any travel tips or tips that you'd like to share with our readers or watchers, I guess, please leave them in the comments below. And if you'd like to share this with anybody you might think would find it helpful, that would be wonderful.
thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to being back with you again soon.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.